Hello, guys. Imagine stepping back 3,000 years to ancient Egypt, where pharaohs were seen as living gods, expected to marry their siblings to maintain divine bloodlines. This wasn't about love, it was about power, politics, and preserving a sacred image, though the genetic consequences were grim. Picture the Nile River, reeds swaying, and a golden palace glowing at sunrise. Inside, a pharaoh wakes, revered as the embodiment of Horus, married to his sister to mirror the gods Isis and Osiris. This wasn't a secret. It was a sacred tradition, woven into Egypt's society to keep the throne untouchable. Why marry siblings? The belief was that divine blood must stay pure. Mixing with outsiders risked diluting godhood. Scholars debate whether this was genuine religious conviction or a strategic move to lock power within one family. Royal siblings were raised in luxury, trained in rituals, and bound by duty, not choice. Marriages were political tools, with some sisters elevated to queens and others sidelined to temples as divine batteries for political leverage. Family trees were less like trees and more like tangled vines, proudly displayed on palace walls. Art rarely showed affection, but one rare tomb painting depicts a royal brother and sister kissing, hinting at a complex dynamic, sacred, yet unsettling. This wasn't unique to Egypt. Other cultures had similar practices, but Egypt's system was meticulous. Pharaohs like Amenhotep I and Thutmose III married sisters to solidify their divine credentials. The queen, often the great royal wife, was no mere consort. She was a co-goddess, trained in the same rituals as her brother. Yet, the system bred paranoia. Sibling marriages created tight-knit power circles, but also rivalries, with sisters pitted against each other for influence. Some argue these marriages were about control. Sisters were trusted allies, unlikely to bring rival agendas. Others suggest legitimacy passed through the queen mother, making sister marriages essential for heirs. The 18th dynasty's Ahmose I and his sister wife, Almost Nefertari, set a precedent. Their union celebrated as a symbol of unity after expelling the Hyksos invaders. Nefertari became a goddess-like figure, worshipped long after her death. But the consequences of inbreeding surfaced later with Tutankhamun, the boy king born of a sibling union. DNA tests reveal his physical ailments: club foot, cleft palate, and fragile bones, likely from generations of inbreeding. Married to his half-sister, Akhenaten, their two stillborn daughters bore similar defects, showing the dynasty's decline. The Ptolemaic dynasty, Greek successors to Egypt's throne, took sibling marriage to extremes. Ptolemy II and Arsinoe II, dubbed sibling gods, flaunted their union on coins and statues. The Ptolemies, starting with Ptolemy I after Alexander the Great's death, embraced Egyptian customs but added Greek theatricality. Cleopatra VII, product of 9 generations of inbreeding, navigated this legacy with cunning, marrying brothers for optics but wielding power independently. The Ptolemies' court was a viper's nest. Jealousy, betrayal, and murder were common, with sibling marriages as much about survival as tradition. Behind the throne, sister wives in the royal harem were political players, not just consorts. The great royal wife held immense influence, but lesser wives, often sisters or cousins, schemed for their sons' futures. Queens like Tai, though not a sister, ruled with iron will, while Nefertari, Ramesses II's sister wife, was depicted as his equal in art, a rare honor. Yet, the system's obsession with blood purity blinded rulers to external threats: unpaid taxes, crumbling temples, and foreign invaders. By Cleopatra's time, the divine myth had faded, and Rome's arrival ended the tradition with her defeat. This was a world where marrying your sister wasn't just normal. It was destiny, a ritual to preserve divine power. But beneath the gold and glory, it was a system that bred fragility, paranoia, and collapse, leaving behind mummies, tombs, and a legacy of tangled bloodlines. You pause at a chamber door, its walls vibrant with paint, the air rich with cedar oil. Faint laughter drifts from within, guarded, perhaps a queen's jest or a calculated lie. Behind these doors, power isn't just about crowns. It's about who shapes the narrative, who whispers the right name at the right moment, and who wields blood, ritual, and family like weapons. Next, you step into the temples, where priests don't merely bless these unions. They claim the gods ordained them. In the great temple, sunbeams pierce narrow slits, casting golden stripes across ancient columns. The air hums with myrrh and stone, heavy with permanence. Priests glide past in silent reverence, their linen robes trailing like whispers of forgotten tales. Here, myths justify Egypt's strangest customs. Sibling marriage isn't just acceptable. It's sacred because the gods like Osiris and Isis, Geb and Nut, Shu and Tefnut, were sibling lovers. Their unions birthed the earth, sky, and Nile, making them cosmic blueprints, not taboos. A priest recites the tale of Isis and Osiris. Osiris, the just king, murdered by his jealous brother Set. Isis, his sister wife, reassembling his body and conceiving Horus through divine will. It's a tragic, romantic myth that underpins pharaonic rule. Every king is Horus, every queen is Isis, ensuring royal continuity through sibling unions. These stories aren't bedtime tales. They're the scaffolding of the kingdom. Annual rituals, parades, and chants reenact this divine cycle, embedding the idea that the kingdom is a living myth. Scholars debate how deeply the average Egyptian believed this. Did farmers care if the king was a child of sibling gods? Maybe not. But in the temples, this logic was absolute, sanctifying sibling marriage as unchallengeable. Priests reinforced this with architecture, side-by-side sanctuaries for sibling deities, their statues equal in height and posture, offerings and hymns twinning them in divine unity. Some see this as power theater, a myth to lock out rival claims, but dissent too loudly, and you might find yourself excluded from festivals, or worse. Behind a column, you overhear junior scribes debating whether the myths are spiritual or political tools to keep elites in power. One mutters, "It's blood and power dressed up as eternity," before slipping away. Yet, public festivals make the myth vivid. Actors play Osiris, Isis, and Horus, reenacting sacred marriages with music and incense. The crowd watches, believing these rituals keep the Nile flowing and the sun rising. Fear drives this. Fear of dilution, infiltration, or a kingdom unraveling without its myths. Some kings and queens were even deified as Horus and Isis while alive, their marriages seen as cosmic maintenance. Failure could mean the Nile drying up or the sun stalling. During the Hebsed festival, the pharaoh and his sister wife perform as Horus and Isis, their divine unity central to the spectacle. The king, in a double crown and gold-threaded kilt, and the queen, in a sheer gown with a throne-shaped headdress, move as one. The crowd cheers, tossing palm fronds, caught in the myth's weight. Foreign diplomats watch skeptically, seeing pageantry, but for Egypt, it's survival against drought and rebellion. In the temple, the queen offers food, water, and incense, symbols of fertility and renewal, while the king drinks sacred beer. They sit on twin thrones under a starry canopy, mirrored by carvings of Osiris and Isis. Some festivals even parade embracing god statues, symbolizing cosmic necessity. Scholars debate whether biological siblinghood was essential or if symbolic marriages sufficed, but the performance sold the myth, keeping the kingdom's faith intact. Across the ocean in the Inca Empire, sibling marriage was equally cosmic. The Sapa Inca, child of the sun god Inti, married his sister, the Koya, representative of the moon goddess Mamaquilla. Their union ensured balance. Reflected in Cusco's gold-lined Temple of the Sun, historians note this was mainly a royal practice, symbolizing divine purity. In ancient Hawaii, high-ranking chiefs, Ali'i Nui, married siblings to preserve mana, a spiritual life force. A child of such a union held unmatched sacredness, untouchable by commoners. The Habsburgs later echoed this with cousin marriages, chasing the same purity. These cultures, Egypt, Inca, Hawaii, saw sibling marriage as a worldview, not a glitch, tying divine rule to cosmic order. Back in Egypt, you enter an archive room, papyrus scrolls stacked meticulously. Did the ancients know the risks of sibling marriage? The Ebers Papyrus from 1550 BCE details remedies but shows no grasp of genetics. Illness was blamed on spirits or gods, not recessive traits. They noticed hereditary features but linked deformities to fate or divine will, not inbreeding. Some scholars speculate midwives might have suspected a pattern in fragile royal babies, but there's no proof. Royal children with deformities were revered as divine, not blamed, though some were hidden in temples, their flaws a contradiction to Egypt's obsession with symmetry. Modern DNA analysis reveals the toll. Tutankhamun's club foot, scoliosis, and stillborn daughters reflect generations of inbreeding. Royal mummies show cleft palates, fused joints, and high infant mortality, genetic traps from closed bloodlines. Some mummies even show post-mortem corrections to mask deformities, preserving the illusion of divine perfection. The founder effect amplified rare mutations, weakening dynasties. Fragile heirs sparked succession crises, fueling unrest. Some argue inbreeding's impact was overstated, with war and famine playing larger roles. But the pattern is clear. Tight bloodlines led to brutal dynasties. At a royal wedding, a teenage pharaoh and his sister sit on oversized thrones, their faces stiff with duty. There's no romance, only the weight of empire. She's a divine consort, her bloodline her dowry, trained to embody Isis without question. Behind the myth, there's silent despair. Akhenaten's desperate letter to the Hittites reveals a woman trapped, rebelling against her fate. Some sister wives were retroactively declared siblings for legitimacy, their lives rewritten for propaganda. In the palace gardens, you imagine queens longing for simpler lives, far from this gilded cage. In the records room, you find Hatshepsut's name, half-sister and wife to Thutmose II. She defied tradition, seizing power as pharaoh after his death. Donning a false beard and masculine regalia, she ruled outright, proving sister wives could wield power directly. These women didn't just marry power, they became it, navigating a system where bloodlines dictated destiny, yet their cunning reshaped history. Hatshepsut didn't just wield power, she rewrote the rules. Claiming divine birth, she declared her mother was impregnated by the god Ammonius. With her father Thutmose, I'm merely a bystander. Her royal sibling blood was her divine credential, enabling her to reign for over 2 decades, a time of stability and prosperity. Temples rose, trade routes expanded, and monuments were built that still awe visitors. She ruled openly, not in secret, pointing to her pure bloodline to claim the throne without needing war or foreign alliances. She wasn't alone. Many sister wives held the title God's wife of Ammonius, blending priestess duties with political influence. In some dynasties, this role came with estates, income, and control over temple affairs. These women were power brokers, not ornaments, managing land and shaping policy. Picture a sister wife in a courtyard, negotiating with foreign dignitaries under a palm canopy, her decisions sealed as law. Behind closed doors, she could elevate or ruin officials, secure her child's future, and, as king's mother, wield immense authority, sometimes acting as regent. With most pharaohs born of sibling marriages, the sister wife's role was woven into the throne's DNA. A statue fragment, part of a queen's face and shoulder, eroded by time. Hints at a forgotten ruler, her name erased by a later dynasty uneasy with her power. The system thrived because of these women, not despite them. Their education, divine titles, and political savvy stabilized Egypt through rebellion, drought, and dynastic turmoil. Take Queen Tai, wife of Amenhotep III. Though not his sister, she embodied the sister-wife role flawlessly, appearing as his equal in art, handling diplomacy, and guiding her son Akhenaten's reign as queen mother. Some sister wives even commanded personal armies, small but loyal forces signaling their independent influence. Not all succeeded. Some were outmaneuvered, poisoned, or erased, their sarcophagi defaced, their names lost. Yet traces linger. Titles on temple lintels, letters to foreign rulers, frescoes showing queens beside their brother husbands as equals. Sibling marriage was about mythology and bloodlines, but it empowered some of history's most formidable women. In the palace archives, scribes forge history with ink, mastering genealogical improvisation. When bloodlines grew thin or inconvenient, they invented siblings, elevated cousins, or rewrote lineages to fit the divine narrative. A pharaoh without a sister wife? No problem. Declare a noblewoman his half-sister or obscure her origins. This wasn't deceit, it was survival. Legitimacy rested on stories, and a flawless family tree was the best defense against usurpers. Ramesses II's wife Nefertari, depicted as a goddess queen, may not have been his sister, but vague records suggest a crafted narrative. Some queens, clearly not siblings, were portrayed with sibling marriage iconography, their truth decided behind closed doors. Conversely, inconvenient mothers were erased, replaced with divine consorts to sanctify a pharaoh's birth. Scholars debate how often this happened. Rare exceptions or routine fiction? Likely both. Dynasties often tweaked succession lines to maintain the myth. By a reflecting pool, a queen's statue bears titles. King's wife, king's sister. Was she truly his sister, or just a performer in a sacred illusion? The foreign wife dilemma disrupted this system. In a grand audience hall, a pharaoh faces a foreign emissary offering a princess from Babylon or Mitanni. Her silks and spices can't mask her non-divine blood, threatening Egypt's theology. Foreign brides like Tutankhamun, a Mitanni princess married to Amenhotep III, were accepted for alliances but rarely became great royal wives. Renamed and given minor titles, they were scrutinized for their foreignness. Yet, they offered neutrality, no local family rivalries, just loyalty to the king. If their child became heir, scribes spun tales of divine ancestry to legitimize them. Some foreign queens, with charisma or timing, secured their sons' thrones, but many vanished, victims of palace intrigue. When bloodlines folded too tightly, the system collapsed. In a tense courtroom, a frail pharaoh, product of generations of sibling marriages, cannot rule. Whispers of weakness and divine disfavor spread. Advisors clash over successors, a half-royal brother, a military cousin, or even a queen like Hatshepsut. The myth of divine blood no longer holds. Temples omit names, floods fail, and trade falters. Evidence suggests some dynasties ended when heirs became too sick or contested, eroding faith. Statues are defaced, tombs abandoned, and sister wives vanish, exiled, silenced, or dead. The palace, once divine, stands empty, its bloodline exhausted. In a dusty village, far from palaces, farmers and fishermen share tales of the divine egg. Cursed pharaohs born of sister wives, their blood too thick with godhood. One story blames a king's defiance, his descendants twisted by divine wrath. Another sees the royal womb as too sacred for mortal children. These tales, born of observation, not science, persist in Coptic, Islamic, and Greco-Roman lore, echoing a truth. The pursuit of divine purity broke the very dynasties it meant to protect. A persistent tale speaks of a moon-born pharaoh, so malformed he was hidden throughout his reign, issuing decrees through his sister while confined in a darkened temple chamber. Is it true? Highly unlikely, but the fact that people believe it reveals everything. Once the divine veneer is stripped away, what remains is a human horror. A system designed to protect power ended up weakening those it elevated. The idea that this was known not by scientists but by those close to the ground, villagers who witnessed stillbirths, coughing heirs, queens aging too quickly or vanishing too soon, fuels the legend of the divine egg. This term appears nowhere in official inscriptions, not on temple walls or royal tombs. It lives in the oral margins, passed like a secret curse, too dangerous to write, but too compelling to forget. Some versions say the egg cracked. Others, it never hatched. A few claim it still exists, hidden in a sacred vault, watched by blind priests, glowing faintly with a golden light no one dares touch. Even without the egg, the symptoms were everywhere. You stroll through the ruins of a smaller palace, a royal retreat, now a museum for ghosts. The inscriptions are faded, but you can still make out faces, children with oddly swollen skulls, eyes too far apart, limbs carved just a bit too short. These aren't the idealized forms of divine rulers, but attempts to depict real bodies, shaped by generations of incest. The artist's failure to correct them suggests either no one noticed or they thought it normal. Then there's Akhenaten, the heretic king, sun worshipper, and radical reformer. His art famously shows him with elongated features, narrow limbs, wide hips. His children, too, are depicted with alien skulls and sloping shoulders. Was this a stylistic choice, a religious statement, or truth? One theory argues the Amarna style wasn't symbolic but honest, reflecting the royal family's actual appearance. If true, the divine egg wasn't just a curse, it was a mirror. Some local legends claim the Nile itself rebelled during these cursed rains, flooding too much or not enough, with crocodiles growing bolder and birds abandoning nests along the banks. No weather record survived to confirm this, but that's not the point. People believe the land knew, responding not to politics or war, but to a deeper sickness in the blood. As you walk through the necropolis at night, wind brushing sand into soft hisses, you understand why the story stuck. What's more terrifying than a god who dies like a man, or a queen whose womb turns to dust? What's more haunting than a golden dynasty collapsing not from enemy swords, but from its own reflection? The divine egg became shorthand for all that went wrong, a way to explain the slow decay of a civilization that claimed to hold the secret to eternity. Whether they knew the science or not, people felt the consequences. Coffins growing smaller, statues showing fewer heirs, priests holding longer silences in their prayers. You leave the village with the words ringing in your ears. They married their own blood, and the blood turned to sand. At some point, even the greatest empire must ask not just what it believes, but what it's willing to risk for that belief. Sometimes, the cost is written not in stories or monuments, but in the bones of its children. The temple floor is cool beneath your feet, smoothed by centuries of ritual. Columns rise like tree trunks in a forest of stone. Today, no chants echo through the sacred halls. No festival banners flutter in the breeze. Something different is happening, something rare and dangerous. A royal wedding is about to take place, and the bride is not the king's sister or even a cousin. She's a commoner. With this decision, everything Egypt thought it knew about power, purity, and divine inheritance is tested. You stand at the back of the crowd, watching reactions ripple through officials like a sudden wind. Some are stiff with disapproval. Others whisper behind jeweled hands, and a few, with nothing to lose, watch with interest, sensing change. The groom, a newly crowned pharaoh from a complicated line of succession, is young, popular, and dangerously idealistic. The bride is beautiful, but not of the blood. Her family farms barley near the delta. Her father's name appears nowhere in the Book of Kings, and her DNA is gloriously ordinary. The ceremony proceeds anyway. Priests perform the rites, but their voices lack the practiced zeal. The high priest of Ammonius pauses too long before reciting the lineage blessing, quietly omitting the word sister from the part about divine balance through sacred unity. A few eyes narrow, a hand tightens around a staff. This may look like a wedding, but it feels like an earthquake. Why now? Why break thousands of years of tradition? It starts with exhaustion. Egypt's royal line had begun to fray. Too many deaths, too few viable heirs. The previous pharaoh, old and childless, left the throne to his general, whose blood was noble but not divine. That general married a distant niece to repair the lineage, but she died in childbirth. With no surviving sister or cousin close enough to fake it, the throne sat empty until a young noble-turned-royal candidate stepped forward with a radical idea. What if divine rule didn't require incest? What if the gods blessed merit over blood? It was heresy, revolutionary, and the only option left. The new queen, let's call her Nia, though her real name is lost, stepped into the role with unexpected grace. She studied temple rituals, learned sacred dances, and mimicked the tone and bearing of past queens. More importantly, she gave the people hope. She brought no rival noble family or palace politics. When she gave birth to a healthy boy, there was stunned silence throughout the kingdom. No deformities, no misshapen skull, no need to adjust the tomb to hide a cleft palate. Just a royal baby born of an outsider. The people loved it. Outside the court, the reaction was warm, almost celebratory. Commoners saw themselves in her. Market stalls sold tiny clay figures of the queen, holding a baby with normal limbs and no royal wig. Fishermen named daughters after her. Priests tried to adapt, some suggesting the gods chose her precisely because she wasn't royal, that divine favor didn't require a tangled family tree. But not everyone celebrated. Behind palace doors, backlash brewed. Traditionalist priests saw blasphemy, whispering that the Nile would recede in protest, that harvests would fail. When a drought hit 2 years into the reign, Nia was blamed. Not the weather or irrigation systems, but her. Temples reintroduced statues of sister queens, and old myths were recited at festivals with new intensity. Remember Isis. Remember balance. Pressure grew, as did paranoia. A rumor emerged decades later. Nia's second child, a girl, was betrothed to a distant cousin, possibly a forged royal descendant, as palace officials worked to restore the old ways, ensuring her bloodline folded back into itself. Nia's position grew unstable. She played the role well, but the system pushed back. Rumors spoke of poison, a miscarriage that wasn't accidental, divine dreams from priests demanding a return to sibling marriage, whether real or fabricated by ambitious scribes. Nia died young, quietly, perhaps from infection, grief, or the erosion of being told she didn't belong on the throne she helped save. Her tomb, modest compared to sister queens, bears worn inscriptions. No grand lineage, just her name and beloved of the people, a soft, defiant legacy. Her son ruled for years, well-liked, healthy, even-handed. But when he married, the court insisted on a cousin or niece, someone close enough to count. The old system, battered but unbroken, clawed back. Change in Egypt was never permanent, just a ripple on the Nile, brief, beautiful, and gone before reaching the delta. For a moment, they tried something different, exposing a truth the gods didn't want spoken. Maybe blood didn't matter. Maybe power could be shared without myth. Maybe divinity lay in actions, not family trees. You leave the palace, following winding streets to the city's edge, where the air is less perfumed and people speak freely. Here, truth lives beneath woven awnings and half-whispered jokes, where bread is traded, sandals mended, and no one pretends pharaohs are literal gods. You sit by a fire with farmers, boatmen, and women selling beer and onions, hearing what they think of sibling marriage. Spoiler, they're not impressed. They know. Egyptians weren't stupid. They built wonders defying time and death. Did you think they couldn't connect the dots on inbreeding? Even without the word, they saw fragile princes, sickly babies, queens who birthed nothing. They noticed, but didn't always say it aloud, at least not near palace walls. In markets, kitchens, riverbanks, and temple back entrances they talked. I heard the queen married her brother, someone says, rolling her eyes, dipping flatbread into lentils. And he's got a limp, another adds, voice low but judgmental, same as the last one. The gods must be tired. They laugh, sharp-edged, the laughter of peasants who keep Egypt running, the hands that feed, build, and bury it. They bow when the royal barge passes, but with straight backs and untouched thoughts. Public opinion matters, not because pharaohs needed votes. They didn't, but because if enough people stop believing the myth, it loses power. When the myth fades, it's only a matter of time before someone in plain sandals decides they could do better. What do people believe? It depends. Some cling to myths out of habit. The gods married their sisters. That's how the world works. To them, every cracked tooth or crooked toe in the royal family is a divine mystery, too holy to question. Others disagree. It's nonsense, a brickmaker mutters. They marry sisters so no one else can tell them what to do. There's the truth beneath the incense. Sibling marriage wasn't sacred but selfish, a way to hoard power, not preserve cosmic order. The myth was perfume overall. Some Egyptians were jealous, not of marrying siblings, but of royals bending rules. Commoners followed arranged marriages, dowry laws, and sensible lives, while kings picked sisters through festivals and were praised. Divine privilege, they called it. Divine arrogance, more like. Jealousy faded as consequences became visible. Word spread of royal children dying before naming rituals. Midwives whispered of too much sameness in the blood. Grannies mumbled spells against inherited curses. They weren't scientists but knew patterns, saying, "We don't do that in our house." Passing a shrine to Hathor, goddess of love and motherhood, you see offerings of pomegranates and wine. Prayers for fertility and healthy children, not royal blood but strong blood. A quiet rebellion choosing survival over sanctity. Sometimes people got bold. A street performer recites a comedic poem during festival week, poking fun at a pharaoh's strange head. Born of 2 crowns, but no chin, he crows. The crowd roars until guards arrive. He vanishes, but the story spreads like fire. In some districts, priests downplayed sibling marriage to avoid questions, focusing on Horus slaying Set rather than Isis loving Osiris, seeking inspiration, not unease. Yet, people showed up for coronations, cheered royal barges, whispered prayers for new obelisks. Myths aren't just believed. They're needed, holding things together, making suffering noble and obedience sacred. When the royal family grows too strange, fragile, or removed, something shifts. You pass children playing pharaoh and priest. One shouts, "I am king. I marry nobody, just the gods." Another replies, "You married your donkey." Giggles and chases follow. That's how myths die, not with rebellion, but laughter. The next generation stops taking it seriously, and no divine ceremony can patch the hole. At night, oil lamps flicker, the Nile hums its lullaby. Peasants are home, but their voices linger. Let kings marry who they want. We'll marry for strength, not beauty or holiness. They live in a real world where fields flood or don't, children live or don't. While pharaohs spin myths and marry sisters, people watch, shaking their heads, waiting for the next royal child to limp down palace steps. You move through polished stone chambers, silent, shimmering with torchlight. Everything feels curated. Paintings, reliefs, ivory trinkets arranged to say power is a man's game. But beneath the surface, another truth pulses like a heartbeat. Behind many pharaohs, golden statues, and carved muscles stood a woman. Not just a wife or sister, but a queen with her own agenda, guards, spies, and scribes, wrapped in silk and sealed with a smile. You've met Hatshepsut and Tai, but now you step into the realm of those in the shadows. Women who use the incest system as a loophole, not for love but for power, grabbing it while others pretended it was sacred tradition. You push open a cedar door into a queen's private quarters, her name not etched in bold hieroglyphs, her public image constrained. Here, she ran the empire. She was the king's sister, yes, but also his advisor, keeper, and, when needed, replacement. By playing the pious wife, bowing publicly, and bearing children, she could do almost anything. Negotiate alliances through temple networks, bribe guards, decide which brother was promoted or reassigned to Nubia, all from a velvet couch under a painted ceiling, surrounded by lotus oil and gossip. You might see these queens as tragic, forced into unwanted marriages, and that was part of it. But many turned the trap into a throne, especially when male heirs were sickly, absent, or useless. When a king was too young or weak, the great royal wife stepped in. Always. If she was his sister, even better, no one questioned her loyalty, not out of trust but necessity. Take Cleopatra too, not the famous one, a Greek princess who married into the Ptolemaic dynasty and ruled as regent for her son. Unborn to sibling marriage, she stepped into it like it was tailored for her. After her husband's death, she wielded authority so seamlessly her brother-in-law didn't challenge her, thanks to her bloodline and brains. Some queens didn't just influence power, they created it. Scholars believe the god's wife of Ammonius' role evolved to give royal women control in a system barring them from the throne. It began as ceremonial, chanting, pouring libations, but became a title of immense clout. These women, often sister wives, had lands, wealth, and bureaucracies, their sacred office a reward for being indispensable. One queen, known only as beloved of Ammonius, used her temple network to place allies in key roles, shift resources, and interfere in succession. When the king died unexpectedly, her son ascended within hours, backed by the army and priests, with scribes rewriting the story by morning. A preserved letter from a worker's tomb shows a stonemason complaining of a queen's orders to change wall plans, her third demand that month, a rare glimpse of her direct control. Another hallway is lined with reliefs of queens performing kingly rituals, offering to deities, slaying enemies, wearing the crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. These aren't accidents, but proclamations. I was here. I ruled. The sister-wife system gave them legitimacy. They were the bloodline. If their brother-husband faltered, died young, or fell into political traps, who better to steady the throne than the woman beside it? Sometimes that power turned dangerous. Stories, some whispered, some etched, tell of queens arranging brothers' illnesses, guiding pliable siblings to marriage, or nudging others to priestly vows or military frontiers. It wasn't just survival, but strategy. These queens weren't passively divine, but politically feral, brilliant, ruthless, cloaked in incense and silk. The world saw a wife. The kingdom felt a ruler. In museum galleries, statues of these queens stand beside kings, smaller in size, but not presents. Plaques list titles, marriages, children, but not how much of Egypt's golden age rested on their shoulders. When the gods gave Egypt sibling marriage, they gave the throne a loophole, and clever women stepped through. In a modern excavation tent in the Valley of the Kings, the scene shifts from gilded halls to khaki-clad archaeologists, plastic gloves, cotton swabs, and academic murmurs. What's happening is sacred, exhuming truth uncurated by gods. A tomb, sealed for over 3,000 years, holds delicate remains, bones brittle as parchment, air heavy with resin and linen. A small sample from a femur unravels centuries of secrets. In a lab, DNA extraction is slow, careful, quiet. No Indiana Jones drama, just patience and protocol as genome fragments are pulled from royal marrow. The results confirm. This pharaoh, a celebrated restorer of temples and builder of monuments, was born of siblings. His bones tell another story. Scoliosis, a twisted knee, arthritis in his 20s, a misaligned jaw causing lifelong pain. The digital report repeats a phrase like a divine whisper turned warning. Homozygous recessive mutation, meaning he inherited defective genes from both parents due to their close relation. DNA doesn't lie, but doesn't tell the whole story. Scholars debate what caused royal mummies' defects: inbreeding, malnutrition, disease, or embalming. Some argue we overinterpret, applying modern logic to an ancient world. But patterns are hard to ignore, especially in the 18th dynasty, where sibling marriage was systemic. Akhenaten and his sister, Tutankhamun and Akhenaten, his half-sister and wife. It's a looped melody with warped notes. The grimmest part: stunning tombs belong to those barely reaching adulthood, buried by 24 at best, their skulls showing congenital anomalies, leg bones bowed, teeth missing or unformed. Not exceptions, but the norm. In another chamber, a CT scanner hums, holding a sister queen's wrapped remains. Her bones show multiple pregnancies, but also severe pelvic trauma, likely from childbirth complications. She died before 30. Her name half erased on the tomb wall. No grand epitaph, just a smudged cartouche. Researchers recently found many mummies assumed male were female, misidentified by early archaeologists due to their masculine roles, including high-status sister wives, whose influence, pain, and genetic place were missed for years. At a display table, ancient birth records, titles, and modern medical notes mix with gene sequencing charts. One researcher points to double-lettered chromosomes. That's why he couldn't walk. Another adds, "We're not sure how he survived so long." Scholars weave science into mythology, pulling secrets from bone dust. Did the Egyptians know? Some think they were unaware, steeped in religion. Others suspect they noticed, but tradition, myth, and divine symbolism were too heavy to challenge. When your family tree is said to be planted by gods, who questions its shape? Modern science, relentless, ignores priestly blessings or scarabs, reporting without judgment that the sacred bloodline was laced with destruction. Yet it persisted for centuries against biology and reason, stubborn faith, political will, or a forgiving human body enduring genetic pressure before cracking. Outside, the lab and tombs stretch into the hills. Egypt didn't die from sibling marriage, but bled slowly, generation by generation. Bones now speak in labs, heard by scholars, not gods. The question isn't whether royal incest existed. It's what the ancient world sacrificed to keep the illusion alive. In a museum's echoing corridors, glass cases and velvet ropes hold Egypt's rulers, ghosts dressed in gold, none telling the whole truth. Tutankhamun's golden death mask stares with serene eyes, hiding a body ravaged by scoliosis, a clubbed foot, and likely malaria, the product of Akhenaten and his sister's union. He ruled 9 years, left no heirs, and limped through rituals, a boy in pain, buried in a rushed, reused, small tomb, as if no one expected him and needed. We call him a wonder, not for what he did, but what he reveals. Across the room, a queen's jewelry case holds lapis amulets and ivory combs. Her name faded, but titles intact. Great wife, sister, mother of the king. Triple duty, triple pressure. These weren't ornaments, but armor against a system demanding she marry her brother, bear nephews, and rule silently. Egypt's legacy feels like theater, artifacts as props, inscriptions as scripts. Pharaohs were actors in a divine role, recited generation after generation, but offstage, drama played out in bone and blood. The audience, us, watches, reveres, rarely questions. Egypt's royal incest wasn't unique. The Ptolemies, Greek rulers post-Alexander, doubled down. Cleopatra, 7 married 2 brothers, not for romance, but strategy, ruling solo while maintaining the facade for political glue. Egypt's legacy wasn't just structures, but the idea that divine rule required family tree control, purity maintained at the cost of health, choice, sanity. A surprising number of 19th-century European monarchs cited Egypt to justify their inbreeding. Cousins marrying cousins, nephews taking aunts, pointing to pyramids. They did it, and look how long they lasted. They ignored Egypt's collapse under internal strain, foreign takeover, and heirs too frail for childhood. A lesser-known pharaoh's sarcophagus shows a short reign, unremarkable statue, and DNA from a half-sister marriage in a thin gene pool. His mummy has fused joints, poor teeth, one leg 2 inches shorter. A king needing help to stand at rituals. His plaque reading, Son of the Sun God, long live the king. Despite evidence, scientific, visual, cultural, the myth of Egypt as perfection persists. People want gold, mystery, drama, not pyramids with pain, rituals with diseased children, or love stories with gangrene. That's Egypt's endurance. Not perfection, but performing it. When bloodlines broke, statues stood. When the last royal child was too frail to breathe, unaided, gods were carved as if unchanged. Passing a replica of Karnak's temple, with pillars like tree trunks under a false sky. Tourists pose, kids run, but a stone king's face smiles, unreadable. You hear him whisper, "I married my sister, was worshipped as a god, couldn't walk without a cane by 15, and still you remember me." That's Egypt's paradox. Admire what was built, ignore what it cost. Paid by kings, sisters, children, generation after generation, buried in limestone and gold leaf. You stand at the threshold of two worlds, one of incense and limestone belief, the other of fluorescent light and museum glass. You follow the arc from gilded coronations to genetic collapse, sacred unions to whispered regrets. Just past the final exhibit, beyond the last faded cartouche, you realize Egypt's obsession with sibling marriage wasn't just about gods or power, but fear. Not of outsiders or enemies, but of chaos. Without a pure bloodline, the delicate order might collapse like a pyramid of sugar cubes. In a land where every sunrise was a gift, every flood a miracle, control was everything. Marrying your sister was control weaponized, a divine loop sealing past, present, and future in royal veins. That loop lies broken. Outside, blinking into daylight, the warmth feels aggressive after cool tombs and quiet cases. The Nile glitters, palm trees shrug off 5,000 years. A tour guide shouts about Horus and Ra. Someone jokes if pharaohs married siblings on purpose. You almost laugh, you know too much. It was on purpose, policy, ritual, myth. Behind every golden mask was a knotted family tree. While priests spoke of balance, midwives wrapped tiny bodies in linen again and again. Some queens met their brother's eyes on their wedding day, thinking, this is the price. But it worked. For centuries, sibling marriage delivered stable transitions, unified divine authority, and a mythic image keeping the population in awe. It built temples, expanded borders, shaped a civilization we romanticize. Like all myth-based systems, it had an expiration date, fraying quietly from within. Some scholars say the end began not with war or drought, but a whisper. What if we marry outside the bloodline? That question cracked the mirror, bleeding power from hushed voices behind palace curtains or temple doors. Others say it never ended. Modern rulers, empires, corporate dynasties play the game. Keep it in the family, control inheritance, hoard the name, image, legacy. Bloodlines don't marry now, money does. The myth of sacred succession thrives, trading inks for logos. Strolling the riverbank, you imagine the last royal sibling marriage. Solemn, desperate, clinging to ritual as gods grew quiet, tomb builders erred, temples echoed more than chanted. They wed brother to sister, as if it could stop time. It didn't. Foreign powers came. Priesthoods collapsed. Myths turned to dust. The royal bloodline, once proudly preserved, drowned in war, assimilation, forgetfulness. The last confirmed Egyptian king to practice sibling marriage was likely Ptolemy XII, Cleopatra VII's father. By then, it was performative, an echo of an echo. Cleopatra married her brother husbands to appease tradition, but ruled alone. The marriage was a costume, and when she died, the illusion died with her. Sitting on a sun-worn stone, watching water flow, it's tempting to mourn the ambition, artistry, mad gamble of inbreeding for divine continuity. But the lesson isn't collapse. It's what people do to keep a story alive. This was a story. We are divine. We are one. The bloodline is unbroken. When cracks showed, fragile heirs, twisted limbs, childless queens, they didn't stop telling it. They turned up the volume, added gold, built bigger tombs, held longer festivals. The myth had to outshout the truth until it couldn't. You rise, dusting sand, turning from the river. Ruins of temples and palaces shimmer, stubborn, silent, uncaring if you believe or are impressed. They've outlived truth and fiction. You carry the story now, the messy one of power and paranoia in sacred loops, divine kings limping through ceremonies, sister queens smiling through jasmine veils, their fates sewn into their blood. When asked if pharaohs married their sisters, you'll say yes and know why. Deeper in the desert, beyond tourists and stone columns, beyond the Nile's whispering fields, There's only wind, sand, and time's slow hum. A place where stories rest, waiting to be remembered. You followed the trail from golden thrones to crumbling bones, through dynasties, DNA, myth, and mutation. This is the end of the road, but in Egypt, endings are transformations. Ask the pharaohs. Ask the gods. Sitting on a dune, the horizon melting in heat waves, you hold it all. Grandeur and grief, monuments and migraines. A civilization declared its kings gods and married them to sisters. Not from lust or laziness, but cosmic conviction. The only way to keep the world balanced, the sun rising, the Nile flowing, the people safe. It worked. They built eternity with bare hands, carved echoing names, made death a doorway. But beneath ran a tight spiral of blood. Sibling marriages, divine unions, children born with too many gods in their genes, too little time in their lives. They were rulers and sacrifices, human offerings to an idea too beautiful, powerful, fragile to survive, unchallenged. The brilliance, the poetry, is their full belief. You don't marry your sister for politics alone. You do it because you think the universe needs it, because the gods won't act unless your family mirrors them, because anything less is chaos. It's easy to scoff, call it barbaric, backwards, doomed. But you've walked with them, stood in courtyards, sat in shrines, watched queens arrange their faces. You've seen fear behind rituals, love buried in control, and you can't dismiss it. Let's end not with judgment, but understanding. These were brilliant, terrified, devoted people holding a civilization together with stories. When their gods demanded purity, they gave everything, daughters, sons, themselves. The final tomb is modest, unfinished, its inscription shallow, artwork rough, carved in haste during a chaotic transition. The name is scratched out, damaged by time or politics. One line remains, deep and deliberate. I have walked with the gods. I have carried their blood. No boasts, no titles, just an exhausted confession from someone who lived the myth and bore its weight. Inside, the light fades, the air cool, quiet still. The occupant, prince, queen, or one of thousands of royal children dead before their second decade, stands imagined at the threshold, wrapped in linen, heavy with amulets, head high, not wanting to be gods, but having no choice. That image lingers as you leave. Not gold or power, but the child, sibling, vessel for 1,000 years of ambition and belief, laid gently in sand like a myth too real. As wind erases your footprints and the sun sets, you see what the pharaohs protected. Not just bloodline or gods, but the illusion of possible perfection, a world held by marrying your mirror. Mirrors crack, illusions fade. Yet we remember, the story too big, human, tragic, beautiful, strange to dismiss. You've seen what they built, felt what they feared, heard the myth's heartbeat. Now you can rest, too.